Hey team, it's Walker Diable, author of Buy Then Build, creator of the Acquisition Lab. In business, we're always trying to figure out what is the value of a business or how do I drive value in my business, okay? Today, what I want to talk about is the invisible driver of every business in the private capital markets and its ability to drive value and create value for others. So, a lot of you know that I've bought 7 companies over a decade, about $16.5 million in revenue during that time, and I've had a chance to work in a number of different industries, okay? We've developed technology, we've built out new product lines, I've worked in manufacturing and distribution and e-commerce and all of these different venues. And the thing is that the underlying ability to be able to drive value is a cross-functional thing. In other words, if I wanted to roll out a new product line, I needed to be in a certain position. If I wanted to make a new hire, I needed to be in a certain position. If I wanted to grow through acquisition, a lot of these things come down to timing, right? And so I want to get into this. So what I want to do is I used to race road bikes, okay? Like Lance Armstrong style, okay? Now I never went pro. But I was able to actually win the state championship of Missouri in my category. And so the thing is what you learned, okay, as an athlete, there's a core metric that actually drives the ability to be able to win something like that, okay? And so in other words, a lot of people really wanted to have really lightweight, carbon fiber bikes, okay? And a lot of people worked really, really hard at being able to go fast on whatever bike that they had, and didn't really care about all the fancy gear. Okay, what it ultimately comes down to, okay, is the power to weight ratio. Okay, it doesn't matter how fast you can go. It only matters how fast you can go in relation to the amount that you weigh. Okay, so in other words, I'm a small framed cyclist. I was able to keep a very low weight, and by exercising, I was able to, build up my red blood count or whatever, and my muscles and my recovery time, and be able to push longer so that my power in relation to my weight was significantly stronger. And so it was the combination of the power to weight ratio that actually ended up giving me that jersey. That was the metric I was always focused on, right? It wasn't cadence, it wasn't heart rate. I mean, all these things matter, but ultimately it's how do I increase my power to weight ratio? So I want to create an analogy, all right? Your P&L is blood. Your income statement is blood, okay? So you've got revenue coming in, and this revenue is really the heart of your business, okay? That's the heart of your business. If you don't have revenue coming in, then there's no business, okay? Which is also one of the reasons why I like to acquire rather than start from scratch. But that's a different story, which we've covered. So then you end up with these sort of like cost of goods sold, okay? These cost of goods sold. This is the first sort of subtraction off of that revenue. This is the heart kind of contracting, okay? So you've got a heart, you then contract it, and then after you take this revenue and you minus the cost of goods sold, you end up with your gross margin, all right? And that gross margin is that pump, that right, just into your business of cash in this case, right? And this allows you, essentially to, manage all of your operating expenses and anything else that's down here. And so the thing is a lot of people think that, they might be worried if they see a negative net income on their profit and loss statement. A negative net income may or may not be because of bad operations. So I'm not too worried about net income. What you are looking for ultimately is an earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or some sort of seller discretionary earnings that allows you to understand what the true cash flow of this box is. So ultimately, when you're acquiring a business, you are acquiring a box that generates money, okay? Now, over on the other side is where we have your balance sheet, okay? And on your balance sheet, you have your assets on one side, and you've got your liabilities on another. And when you take your assets and minus your liabilities, you get, owner's equity, right? And this owner's equity is critical, and let me explain why. When you buy a company, all right, you are going to buy it almost all the time with debt, okay? Even people that can pay cash. Look at private equity. Private equity's been around for decades. They have trillions of dollars that they're trying to deploy, and they're still putting, make a note, I mean, a lot of you want to know what is the exact right amount, textbook answer for the amount of debt that I put on a business acquisition. The answer to that is 40 to 60%, okay? If you want to get the benefits of the equity buildup, but you also want the protection of not being over levered, this 40 to 60% is what you see time and time again in the private equity industry, okay? And so you've got your assets and you've got your liabilities. Your balance sheet is your body type, okay? So this over here is your cardiovascular system. This over here is your body type, okay? And the key is that assets are muscle, okay? This is the muscle, your strength. And your liabilities, for lack of a better description, let's call it fat, okay? So if you have a whole lot of fat, okay, and not a lot of muscle, you are not necessarily the healthiest body type, okay? But if you reverse it and you end up with a lot of muscle and a very, very low, body fat index, you end up looking like, The Rock, right? And you are strong and you are able to have the impact that you want to have as a business, okay? And ultimately, the amount of money that your business is worth, the amount of money that the business is worth that you are buying is all really tied up in the amount of impact this company can have, okay? So if you can increase the amount of impact in a business, this impact is ultimately what is going to drive the financial strength and the value of the business, because you are able to have the impact that you want to have as an entrepreneur, and you can also help the most people execute what they need to do, right? And so the thing is that when you first buy a company, all right, most of us are not going to be buying on private equity levels, okay? Most of us are not institutional buyers. If you're rocking out in acquisition entrepreneurship, you're usually going to be using heavy leverage. And so let's just say that you buy a company with 20% down and you decide, okay, I'm going to put 80% debt on it. Well, your owner's equity then would show, 20 minus 80. That is an obese number, okay? And so the minute that you buy the company, you're actually not in shape. You need to get in shape, okay? Now here's the thing, on the flip side of this equation, a lot of times, I want you to imagine that baby boomer who owns a company, has owned it for 40 years, the cash flow helped them put all their kids through college, and they're just sitting there in their 60s and have no intent on taking on any debt or doing any big initiatives, and it's just kind of chugging along, okay? By the way, footnote, love those businesses. And so the thing is that in order to create value in a business, you have to constantly be stair-stepping up how out of shape you get, right? So the minute you get in great shape, if you want to continue to increase the amount of impact that you're having, you have to be able to, again, take on debt and kind of go sideways for a while. This allows you to stair-step up to a new level, okay? Now, sometimes the cardiovascular system is so healthy it can fuel this, okay? But the concept here is that you get to a really healthy spot on your body type, and then you've got to take on more liabilities and tread water for a while, right? And then to continue to increase and take your business to the next level. Now here's the thing. This is where the cross-functional part comes in. When you are buying a business, okay, this is maybe what a normal stair step would look like. If you're buying it with a whole bunch of leverage, all right, debt, what's going to happen is you're actually going to elongate out the amount of time that it takes you to feed this piece right here, okay? If you buy it with no debt at all, then you just come right back. You're paying yourself immediately, right? And the concept there is, I actually think it's more risky to buy with 100% cash. Like you're, in my opinion, run the economics, okay? Understand the business model. Like having some leverage is the best way to increase not only the equity buildup and the ROI on your investment, return on your investment, but it also adds safety to the overall investment. Now, because you take on a large amount of debt, okay, you are spending future cash flows. So it's not until, pick a number. Let's say you've got a 10-year loan, a 10-year SBA loan. You may take 6 years doing nothing but keeping the business operating like it was. Maybe taking a little bit of this cash and investing it in some low-hanging fruit or inexpensive upgrades. But it's not until about year 6 where you start, unless you're able to build it faster, okay? If you're able to take this cardiovascular system and crank it and keep all kinds of cash flow and EBITDA coming in to build your body type faster, well, hey, that's key. But if you keep it about the same, the thing is you're gonna need these funds to build this up. And so it's gonna take a while, okay? If you buy an old economy business with no industry tailwind and there's no underlying trends that's gonna help you elevate it, it's gonna take a while to sort of build this body type up before you're able to innovate again and keep going. And so the concept here is that, ultimately when you go to sell your business, okay, you're gonna wanna sell it, obviously way up here, not way down here, okay? And so, buy low, sell high, right? You're welcome. But the point is as you've got to build up your body type first, which delays the amount of impact that you can have for a short period. So the concept is this. What is the value of a business? Okay, it's in the amount of impact that a company can have. And a company can have the most impact when its body type is strong, okay? So when you buy a business, I want you to be thinking about it more often than not as bootstrapping a startup underneath, okay, a machine that is already generating money, okay? So, there's nothing that bothers me more than people that are looking for, pet peeve I should say, people that are looking for companies to buy. They find one and then they say to me something like, Walker, this business is kicking off $1 million a year. Nothing is kicking off $1 million a year, okay? It takes work, it takes effort, it takes time, it takes money, it takes investment, it takes direction, it takes strategy, it takes relationships with the customers to make sure that this is coming in. You've got to manage the operating expenses, manage your cost. You get the picture, okay? This is hard work, and what you got to do is get to work to build a strong body type so that you can have the most impact, so that you can have the most financial strength, so that you can have the most valuable company that you can have, so that when you go to exit that business, you too are generating wealth for you and your family, okay? And by the way, your employees and everybody else, all right? So everyone benefits from a company that is able to increase its value. And the fundamental driver is be financially sound, okay? Listen, if you are looking to buy a business in the next 12 months, 12 to 18 months, 6 to 18 months, we created the Acquisition Lab as an alternative to buy-side business brokerage or buy-side advisory services, okay? It's the first do-it-with-you buy-side advisory service. We've got world-class education, a suite of coaches, a bunch of tools, and a vetted community. Only about 25% of applicants are admitted to the lab. Other buy-side advisory services, I was talking to a gentleman this morning, he's paying over $200,000 a year. Ours is extremely inexpensive. It's targeted to be less than 1 month worth of a buy-side advisor's fee because of the way that we function and unpack the process so that we can teach you how to fish and buy businesses for the rest of your life. I'm Walker Diable. See you on the inside. Thanks.